Welcome to another episode of In the Line of Wire with me, Jahara. Today I have with me a legal expert, somebody who has worked a lot in the policy area, Barrister Zahid Jamil. Hi Zahid, good to have you here.
Thank you very much, it's nice to be here, thanks.
Zahid, we're all quite concerned these days. There are two ICT policy processes that are taking place. And a lot of people, both from civil society and from business, are feeling that we are not sort of doing this right, the policy framing. Why don't we have a little bit of a discussion on the basics? How should we go about, or how do countries go about framing policy?
Well, first of all, there's a government or a department that wants to handle this, a ministry for instance, or any other department of the government would have to sort of look at why it's trying to do this. I mean, First of all, it needs to have data and information with it, gather those statistical information. Then what they need to do is put out basically a paper. We have white papers, green papers that are put out all over the world, in the States, in the UK and many other countries. We in the government also get funding from financial institutions abroad to fund projects of that nature. And those papers, basically the first thing would be saying, here's a concept, we want to improve these indicators, we feel that this is an area where maybe the IT industry can do better. What are the, and these are maybe certain suggestions of areas we are looking into.
Or maybe this is the way the country can do better if ICT is implemented in a different way.
Absolutely. And saying that these are the certain areas we think we focus so far, and then put it out as a document to stakeholders to comment upon, saying, number one, would you think that there are other areas we should be looking at? What would your views be in these areas? What do we do? And do you feel there's any systemic issue with creating the policy? I think these are the various things that especially for Pakistan, we need to look at. We have a systemic problem about policy making, not just in ICT but in many areas. But definitely, because IT is somewhere where we can actually bring the greatest change, we should be very, very conscious of knowing that if we can bring in systemic reform to policy making and put in a process that actually works, I think we can get a lot of benefit out of that.
And shouldn't we also be looking at, okay, if we do this today, this is going to be the impact on education or on health or on generally the lives of people, or communication of government with citizens, or whatever it is. Shouldn't we be looking at what that impact is going to be, rather than say, okay, these are the policies and this is what we're going to do and this is the law now?
Absolutely. Sometimes the law comes first as a draft, and then they tell you, would you comment on the policies? And that's completely, the cart before the horse. You're supposed to first frame the policy and say, well, this is what we want to achieve, these are the objectives.
Okay, the vision.
The vision, the policy, what are we trying to achieve, and then how do we want to achieve it, and then draft a legislation or an SRO or a notification, not the other way around. That doesn't make sense. And because everybody gets into the language, this is not right, etc. So just, what you're doing is delaying the process. And eventually the product you're going to get is going to be third rate.
Right.
We want to have first rate products. First rate products means, first of all, before you write an essay, for instance, any student who's done literature knows this, anybody who's drafting knows this. First of all, sit down, think about what you're going to do, then make a skeleton of it, put down the points, and then go ahead and start drafting it.
Right.
And then correct it.
Right.
We are doing the other way around. We're putting something on paper, drafting the whole thing, then we're asking questions as to, was the skeleton right? And then saying, okay, hold on, let's do a brainstorming with stakeholders to see if we, even the vision was actually correct. So I think that's one of the things we need to sort of put right. Sort of following on what I said earlier, once you put that document out, then the stakeholders should be engaged in a process where they're given time to respond. And I think this is where I feel that most business and other civil society stakeholders may not be having the resources and should now think about what they need to do here. There's again international funding available for this, where basically what they do is they put up documents in response to this. This happens in every country. Once those responses and comments come officially, they're not the final comments. They never are and should not be treated as such. Unfortunately, here they are treated as such. That opens the debate.
Right.
That opens the dialogue to a multi-stakeholder dialogue forum where everybody comes together. Now they have a fair idea of what it is that everybody thinks and what are their issues. So, as say for instance, if I'm representing the hardware sector, I have a pretty good idea of what the guys in software are thinking.
Right.
Or if somebody in energy or in cybercrime or security or broadband or telecom, we basically have an idea of what different trade bodies or the representatives are thinking.
Or what users want.
Or what users civil society want. What are their concerns? What are human rights concerns? What are civil liberties concerns? What is the freedom of information concern?
And the privacy.
Absolutely.
part.
Privacy, data protection, these are things we just don't have. Confidentiality, for instance, just protection of corporate data, protection of personal data is not protected under the law in Pakistan. So, those are the things, obviously, which we need to take
So
care of.
there seems to be a lot that needs to be thought through
Sure.
before we actually draft a policy.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yet we are told that so-and-so has been given 2 months to draft a policy, or that we are going to come up with a final draft in 6 weeks or 8 weeks. So, that concerns a lot of us, because once a policy is enacted, then going back on it is much more difficult.
Absolutely. And that's what's happened previously also. And that is your statement to the world.
Right.
That is your statement to not just your local investment and stakeholders, but it is your statement to the world also. If you get it wrong, or you're irresponsible in it, or you've done a hash job, or you've tried to do it too quickly, and you haven't put too much thought into it, that is going to reflect in the image that you represent. We talk about perceptions of Pakistan, but this is exactly how we can get it wrong.
Right.
So it's important that we don't do that. It's important that we put a responsible governance process in place. You talked about impact assessments. Before you do anything, setting up an industry, there's something called an environmental impact assessment
Right.
that is done, a study. Now, why should you not do that when you're doing policy? Policy is not just a factory in one location, a geographic location. It has an impact right through the country, to the entire trade of the country. And if you're going to say, look, I want this done in 2 weeks or a month or 2 months, I think there are two things that concern me when people say things like this. One, when they say, yeah, let's do it, but there's no money.
Right.
Or let's do it, but we don't have much time. These two things usually in professional circles represent a lack of commitment and a lack of seriousness.
Right.
That's why when you talk to a professional or talk to people who are serious in business, others, and you say these two things, they walk away from the table because they don't think you're serious.
Okay.
So I think we do not want to represent ourselves as unserious people, as people who are not responsible. So there should be a proper process that is led by all the stakeholders jointly. I think it's something that needs time. I'll give you a simple example. I'm a counselor on ICANN, for instance. If you want to do a policy change, there's a process for it. It takes a few weeks and months, and there's a reason why. The smallest impact of a policy change on, say, for instance, ICANN can affect geometrically what's going to happen in the internet space.
Right.
They're conscious of this, and they know they don't want to move without getting the responses from all the stakeholders. They know they don't want to do it without actually having professional input. They don't want to do it before giving everybody time to think about it.
But wouldn't that be viewed as being bureaucratic? A lot of people would say, oh, this is just lengthening the process. Or if you involve too many people, it'll get messy. These are statements that I have heard during the last few weeks, people talking that, look, if we have 20 people actually in working groups, we will decide what needs to be done.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, it will move things along. But if we have 200 people with different ideas, then how are we ever going to get there? So these are the objections that are raised, and they say, well, we'll never define a policy then, and things cannot move along. Is that true? Can't we move along without actually drafting a policy and fix some things in the meantime while we're working on the policy document?
What you've defined basically is an environment where people are looking at
Right.
You're looking at an environment where there is no systemic framework in place.
Right.
When you hear things like we can't have 200 people, or we should only have 20 people in a working group, you automatically, to a professional, immediately you respond, you realize, there is no system, there is no framework. It means there's no systemic framework in place, and that is the problem. So the first thing, as I said, and when you make a policy, you've got to define, okay, what is the framework going to be? Who's going to be in these working groups? Why are they going to be in those working groups?
And the overarching principles
And
by
absolutely.
which each of these groups will work.
And that's a very important point. If you have a working group that's working on security,
Right.
now this happened, for instance, in one of the working groups, there was a security working group. We started inevitably talking about infrastructure.
Right.
We started inevitably talking about certain other aspects, which electronic commerce or payments, that we were not necessarily supposed to do. And that's a good thing. If you don't have your terms of reference in place of a working group, you're going to go all over the place.
Right.
All right, you try to restrict it. Then what happens is that you create a policy that is what I call in isolation as a silo.
Exactly.
That policy may be in complete conflict where the policy be made by the infrastructure group,
Right.
or the network group, or the telecom group, or the people in e-commerce, for instance. They may not have the benefit. So I think that what needs
But
to be...
can't that be fixed by the person or persons who are at the top, who will have access to all these documents from the different working groups?
You might as well then get rid of the working groups.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly.
We're back to the same.
Because
You see,
you're going to change
yeah,
it according to what
exactly.
you think is right.
So the idea is that you don't start from the working groups to the top. What you do is you have a general body.
Right.
You get people together, and you say, all right, these are the things that we're trying to achieve. These are the principles that we're trying to, put into place. Now, these are the things that we will say. Number one, for instance, simple things as that no working group is going to put into place any policy which is technology specific.
Okay.
Give advantage to one technology as opposed to another.
And the area of gender diversity. That needs
Gender
to be
diversity
looked
has to be there. There cannot be discrimination.
Yes.
We do not want to upset policies that are sort of involved internationally. So you can come up with 10, 15 basic principles
Right.
that sort of
that each of the working groups must follow.
absolutely. That way you don't have conflict within the working groups. That's why, as I said, it's an architecture. It's a framework.
Right.
It's not a simple idea that you have a working group bana diya and that comes out with some recommendations. Another one comes out with recommendations. This is exactly the problem with our government. We have one department which is basically a working group working on textiles and industry. We have one department which is a working group working on ports and shipping. We have one department working on air, which is the Ministry of Defense. And when you put all these together, we have different policies coming up. So that's why you have a cabinet.
Right.
The purpose of having in the government, there's a cabinet where these things come and every minister has its say. Obviously, the responsible department which says, or this is how we do it. But at the end of the day, all of them know what the government's policy generally is.
Right.
They can't move away from that. So that is how you need to do a policy making process also. And by the way, when you say bureaucratic, the reason is that bureaucrats and civil servants in government traditionally known how to run this.
Right.
We're finding that breaking down. Pakistani civil servants, also people who were trained under the British and India, for instance, were one of the best managers of systems. They really were. And we should be proud of our heritage in our Pakistani civil society.
But we've lost them then.
But we have, well, I mean,
Or we are ignoring
that's a
them.
different program, for instance,
Yeah.
but we've lost the amount, and they're very intelligent people also, but we've taken away that capability for them to be able to function. Hence, their professionalism in running bureaucracy has also been affected. Now, I don't say that you should be bureaucratic. I'm not saying that. You should have systems which are faster. But giving them, using their professionalism about how to run policy reform and how to have frameworks in place and how to do it, how it's done in the modern way and mechanism is very important. If we followed what mechanisms are followed in other countries, which are developed countries, which are market economies, which do not try to be bureaucratic, which have their own processes, I think we can do well.
So why are we trying to reinvent the wheel? Why do we not follow a process that is already in place in other countries? I mean, this is not the first country to be putting together an ICT policy. In fact, it's the second time that we're doing it ourselves. And okay, we may have made mistakes in the past, but we've seen other countries develop policies that have been very successful, that have changed the entire landscape of countries. Why do we not learn from them? I mean, is it necessary that it should be done totally differently in Pakistan? Or do we have to create something of our own?
The internet was not our creation.
Right.
The internet was not our invention. When we create policies about something somebody else has made, which impacted in such a way that it breaks down, and I don't have to mention examples, but I think everybody understands, it shows you how short-sighted that is. Policies are supposed to not try and break or make or mold things that are functioning. We know
Right.
that the internet functions.
Right.
So having policies about that, which are going to try and interfere with it, I think is a short-sighted view, for instance. That's number one. Secondly, it is possible for us to get information and knowledge and input from abroad about what are the things that they have done. There are people waiting to give it to us.
Yes,
the
there
people
are
wanting
lots of
to
people
throw
who are
money.
very helpful.
The foreign exchange, we're talking about a foreign exchange reserve, not mean that they're willing to give us money to do this.
Right.
For some reason, we're just not taking it. Or even if we do take it, we don't actually put it into place. I don't know what the reason is. I don't want to get into too many details.
Right.
But these are the things that, for instance, are not being done. And I think that is, there was a time, say if you went back a few years, they said, "Ki bhi paisa to bahut hai, don't ask anybody from outside for money. We've got lots of money within our ministries, etc." Now the situation is completely the opposite. You need the forex reserves. You need the money coming in. These are the projects you need. It's going to help us. Do it on a basis where they're not loans. Do it on a basis that we don't have to necessarily pay them back. Okay, have those systems in place if you wish to. But put those international best practice experiences and examples at work. Bring them here.
And we can localize some of the things that are different from other countries. I mean, there are concerns, I know, that people say, oh, but we'll have a policy that is based on Western best practices or Western culture. But, you know, technology is not something that is culture specific. It's the content that's going to be different, right?
Absolutely right. And I don't understand this.
These are reservations that we hear.
But let me just say, I mean, I don't understand what a Western economic or a policy is as opposed to an Eastern one, because when I look to the East, I see Japan. When I look to the East, I see Korea. When I look to the East, I see Singapore and Hong Kong and basically those tigers, the Asian tigers.
They're not Western.
Okay? I mean, they're not Western.
But they're very well functioning society.
In fact, to some extent, their functionings tend to be better. If you look at Australia and New Zealand, they are literally becoming the examples that are being followed in the UK. Their legislations tend to be sometimes even better.
Right.
So saying we're not going to look to the West is, I think, probably a lack of information about how policies are being formed internationally.
Right. So what should we do? I mean, if you had to start today, because this is concerning a number of us, if you had to start today, what would you start with?
I think I'd do it very quickly.
Okay.
What I would do is I'd immediately put into place a framework.
Okay.
I think that's something that the Naidu team under the ministry tried to do. They put into place, number one, put everybody together. You see, I think
there were about 60 people from different...
Fair number of people.
Yeah.
But I want to say something else. I think that was a process that was so unique and new to people that everybody was, okay, how are we going to do this? Are you really talking about an overarching principle? We can actually do this. So I think that it could be done a lot better also if we had everybody on the same page as to what we were trying to achieve, and everybody agreed, yes, this is the mechanism. I think if we're going to say, no, this is not the mechanism, we don't want to do this, then you're going to have difficulties. But if everybody comes to the table saying, yes, we want first of all an overarching mechanism, we want to know what the principles are, let's sit down and define them. This is what we're going to do today in this 6-hour session, and get up from here knowing that these are the principles, and this is how we're going to structure the working groups, that every working group will have to have a term of reference, etc. Now that's not too bureaucratic, it can be done very quickly. I've dealt with those situations. I'm working on working groups internationally where this is done over a week.
Right.
You can do this kind of stuff, put it together. Once those working groups...
But the framework is essential.
The framework is... You can spend a lot of time doing everything, but at the end of the day, that framework is going to crumble. If your foundation is weak, I'm sorry to use these very basic concepts. If your foundation is weak, the house is going to come tumbling down. So if you don't put up a solid framework underneath and a foundation to this policy process, you're going to find it's going to fail.
And also, don't you first need to know where you're at before you define where you're going?
Absolutely. I think that would be, I would see that as an ideal process. However, I know that there are difficulties in collecting statistics in Pakistan and information. So what I would suggest is that although that may be part of something that we do,
but some basic information does exist.
Absolutely, and I think before we embark on this structure, one of the things that business, government and civil society can say in coming into this process is, look, in about a week or 2 weeks time, can you put together what we call indicators?
Right.
Can you put together your HR indicators, your infrastructure indicators, your economy and trade indicators, your export indicators, all of these things, put them together and give us a basic fact sheet, 4 pages for each little sector. Bring that into the session, but again, the session is less about that and more about structure.
Right.
So that structure should be such that it can fit any kind of exercise. That's the idea. Once you've got that structure, you've got that operating system in place, then you can plug in any kind of application you want, and that should work. And that will work in that environment.
Right. Okay.
And basically the working groups are basically those small applications feeding in data to that. And of course, every working group will have to put in their data, their results, their recommendations, and that should come back to the core body.
Right.
And that core body should look at it and say, all right, we are a group of experts. I was not in the securities working group, but I have some experience, so let me share this with you. Don't try and take over the role or try to conflict with the role of the working group, but try to give your feedback in it. And there has to be this 1 or 2 meetings where you sort that bit out. Once you've got that, you know what the beauty of that would be? You've thought it through. You've got the experts working at it. You have ownership of this.
Right.
You're not going to have people walking away from it saying...
And then you have an awareness of what the policy is and what it's expected to achieve.
Absolutely. And there should be a mechanism within the policy to be able to be evolutionary. It's a living process.
Right.
It's not a dead process.
Right.
You started on January 1st, you ended on 31st of December. That's a dead That's not policy making. Policy making is a continuous process, and that's what we need to sort of try to inculcate within this entire process. That put up the infrastructure, keep bringing in policies, but this becomes an alive institution that helps the government as a multi-stakeholder group to do this.
Thank you very much, Zahid. I
Pleasure.
think we will take your advice and we will go from here and we will start that process. With or without consensus from too many people, I think people will come and join the process once they see that something is happening and that we are going to achieve something at the end of it.
I don't see why the private sector shouldn't. The private sector does in its own, in many countries, do this for its own self, and then take those policies.
But
to
keep
the
it
government.
open to government, because the government input is
Absolutely.
extremely important.
Absolutely. If you can create your own processes, if you find that the government is too busy or has lack of resources, invite them, include them. They are important, they are relevant, they are the ones that you need to be able to have an overarching framework implemented.
Exactly. All right. Thank you very much, Zahid. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
That was Barrister Zahid Jamil. I was talking to him about the ICT policy framework and what we need to do in order to ensure that the policy that we come up with impacts our country and everybody in it in a positive way. We will be talking to him again in future episodes, and hopefully we will try and drive this process so that we can end up with a policy that will result in 60% young people in this country contributing positively to the growth of Pakistan. This is Jahan Ara. This was In the Line of Wire. See you again soon.